Hello, this is match 3, game 1 of the Dominion League. On the board, the first thing I notice is Rebuild, and that is usually very powerful and dominating on any board it's on. Another thing you have to look at is whether the Knights can interfere or interrupt that rebuild strategy if you do go for it. I don't think so. Bailey is a good knight to get, but I don't think the Knights will be able to do much damage because you can't play them frequently. The only draw is through Madman or through pathfinding on Village, for example. There's also Crossroads, but maybe pathfinding on Village and then you can play lots of knights. Then you have to worry about knights. But I think Rebuild is fast enough to beat those strategies. Anything with a Madman or with pathfinding on villages or something with or pathfinding on something anyway. Here on my opponent saves a copper presumably to buy Rebuild, which is what happens. I pick up a Crossroads there and a Rebuild. I figure the Crossroads may help. It will draw up some cards sometimes. So I pick it up, and especially in a game with Rebuild, I'll probably end up buying maybe a Duchy or two, so it'll get some draw in, and hopefully the draw is useful. So here, this Crossroads is obviously dead. Natural thing to do is to save it, and on 4 I do save the Crossroads and pick up a silver. The silver is to help me buy more rebuilds and duchies perhaps. Here on 6 I believe my opponent picks up a duchy. Now I found this a bit strange. I thought you would want a second rebuild this early in the game instead of a duchy. However, my opponent thought differently and picked up the duchy. So I'm just thinking about here what it is that my opponent might be going for before playing this Crossroads. It triggers a reshuffle. I miscounted. I thought I had 2 estates in my hand, but instead I have 3. So I draw and trigger a reshuffle. Obviously going to save this rebuild because all my estates are in my hand. It'll do nothing except cycle, which is a waste really, given the small size of my deck. My opponent rebuilds another estate into a duchy there as I get my first estate into a duchy here. So on 7 I have some decisions. I can buy a duchy like my opponent and I consider it for a moment, but I would rather have the second rebuild, saving this copper away for the next turn. Here my opponent just saves and passes it over to me. This Crossroads draws 2 cards and into a rebuild. Unfortunately, I have to prematurely convert this duchy into a province. The ideal thing would be to build one level at a time. You turn all your estates into duchies and then all your duchies into provinces. However, I am not afforded that luxury here. On 4 I consider saving, but you really don't want to save estates. You don't want them to be in your hand in a rebuild game. So instead, I'm going to pick up a messenger here. The plus buy and the 2 coins is good. Really, the whole point of the messenger was that it would act as double silver for me. On 4 I can get messenger, which acts as a silver and a silver, which I gift my opponent as well. So that's the reason for that. Just a bit more money to buy rebuilds and duchies. Maybe spike a lucky province, it happens sometimes. My opponent plays another rebuild there and gets their last estate into a duchy, I believe. Not sure if that's the last estate, but estate into duchy at that point. I play my rebuild, get my estate into a duchy here, saving this silver at this point because I don't really want anything here. So I might as well just save the silver, hopefully pick up a duchy next turn. Because my opponent has half the duchies, or will have half the duchies anyway. So here I just check to see whether my rebuild discarded my other rebuild to know if to discard the deck or not. So this is another useful thing with Messenger. It can discard the deck. And I pick up a duchy here. So that ensures that I won't lose the duchy split. In fact, I have an opportunity to win the duchy split here if I pick up this duchy, but doesn't seem likely given the amount of money that I have. So this time I named province and hit a duchy. I nearly clicked duchy into duchy, which would have been disastrous, but luckily I was able to catch myself and convert that duchy into a province. 3 here is just a silver. Nothing worthwhile to save really. You can save the province, that isn't bad, but again you would rather have the green cards somewhere in your deck or discard pile for rebuild games. So the duchies are split 4-4. My opponent manages to convert their last estate here, so this is the last estate, into a duchy, and picks up a third rebuild rather. So here, naming province obviously, turning the duchy into province, and now I have a choice. I considered gold at this point, because if I can spike a province, that would give me a clear advantage and probably let me win the game. Another option is a third rebuild, which probably, looking at the game again, is the best thing to do, because I have converted all but one of my duchies into provinces, so my opponent still has 3 duchies in their deck, whereas I only have the one. So if I get the third rebuild, what is possible for me is to start milling provinces, naming estates and convert province into province, and hopefully squeak out a win that way. Instead, I save a silver and buy another messenger, I believe. No, I buy a silver. The reason is that I'm trying to spike a province now at this point. So that's why I save money. So here I do not discard with this messenger because I have not seen either of my rebuilds, and my last duchy is in this hand, so I know that if I don't discard, the duchy will go into my discard pile. The rebuild is guaranteed to find that duchy, meaning it won't pair up with a rebuild in my hand. So here I save again the silver, trying to get to a province with money, and I pick up another messenger here, hoping to distribute silvers again. But messenger was my second buy there. I forgot that save counts as a buy, so I don't get to deliver gifts like Santa Claus. So here my opponent turns one of their duchies into a province, and now we each have one duchy left in our deck. The scores are level, and I believe it is at this point my opponent is really considering whether or not to buy this estate, because presumably, or not presumably, but what will happen is that both of us will play rebuild, and then we can end up on 4 provinces and the game would be tied. But with the estate, my opponent can edge in front and win the game. However, if you play your rebuild and you name province and you hit that estate, then it's bad, very bad, because you do nothing there, and it prevents you from converting your last duchy into province. So you have to think for a bit whether or not it's worth it to buy the estate. My opponent does think so and shuffles it into their deck. So that estate is somewhere. It could be in their hand, which would be good, you know exactly where it is, or it could be in the deck somewhere. So here I have, what, 7, not 8, and I save the silver again, hoping for money to buy province, and now I have to consider whether or not to buy this estate. And I check my deck a bit. I know I have 2 rebuilds plus a crossroads in the back, so I can likely find the 2 rebuilds together, which means buying the estate doesn't hurt me. I can play 1 rebuild. If it hits the estate, no big deal. I can play the second one and find the duchy. So that's why I think buying the estate is safe for me there, and it'll also at least let me tie this game. So here my opponent saves something after converting their last duchy into province and picking up an estate. And it doesn't matter if I hit my estate here because I have both rebuilds. Last duchy goes into province and I pick up the estate for the tie. So that is the end of game 1. Thank you for watching and see you in the next one.